Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Hud, chapter 11, verses 25 to 35. Salient aspects of the striving by Nuh are noted in this presentation. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any question or query regarding this presentation. Recap verses 17 to 24. Momineen are guided on a number of important issues which they will face in the world. They need to be aware of who are those people who come to the path of Allah and who are those that do not. We know this runs throughout the Quran, that the Quran differentiates between Momineen and Kafirin. And Kafirin are the ones who do not accept the guidance of the Quran. And then the Quran informs us that the majority of mankind is not going to accept Iman. Therefore, to never become discouraged, as numbers have no significance. Over here, Quran is not that it is people cannot accept. The whole issue is that it is a very difficult and challenging task to accept Iman, because there is a lot of rational thinking and reasoning involved. And most human beings do not make an effort, and they just want to conform to the system. So that is the point we should keep in mind. It's not that Allah has decided that majority will not accept, not at all. If majority wants to, in fact, if whole mankind wishes to come to the Quran, welcome, that is great. But these are difficulties which human beings create themselves for their own selves. So that is the way I put it. Be aware of the methods and tactics used by the religious clergy across the world to act as hindrances on the path of Allah. They use their self-invented religious beliefs to earn their living. Warn people about this so that those who are looking for guidance can benefit from the Quranic teaching. Religious side of the factions, these emerge under man-devised systems. Under Deen, they will disappear. The reason is that because of the way economic system functions under the man-devised system, everyone has to have a living. So this religious clerics and this faction emerges because they have to earn some living as well. And as a result, the whole system becomes corrupted. The laws of Allah always produce their results. These are beyond the control of human hands. By following the wrong path, one can never reach the intended destination. The combination of Iman plus Saleh deeds leads to success and prosperity as detailed in the Quran. Always compare the effects and outcomes of the two different paths of life. This helps to differentiate between the two different states of development of the human self. Let us go to the first set of two verses, 11, 25, and 26. All messengers were warners. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ إِنِّي لَكُمْ نَذِيرٌ مُبِينٌ أَنْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا اللَّهَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ أَلِيمٍ. Meanings, if these people do not acknowledge the reality despite these clear rationales, then bring before them the third method. We have gone through these three methods under Surah Yunus, i.e., advise them to pay attention to the evidence of history and see that when past nations rejected this fact, then what was the outcome of this path of theirs? For example, we sent Nuh to his people, and he said to them that I have come to tell you clearly that the outcome of your existing path of life is nothing but destruction and ruin. What you need to do is to abandon this path and adopt the obedience and rule of only the laws of Allah. If you do not do this, then I fear that a great destruction will encircle you. Because the state of the world becomes quite bad under the man-devised systems. And even if they start well, as far as economics is concerned, they gradually decline because of the hedonistic desires of the people who run the affairs of a nation. So over here, Quran says that Hazrat Nuh was sent to his people because they were in a terrible state. And since Allah has promised to send Wahi as guidance, so he went over there to pass on the Wahi of Allah as guidance. Further reflections on these two verses. Allah here quotes the model of Nuh from the past for us to figure out the issues faced by him and those who accepted Iman with him. There are a few important points noted in these two verses. So the issue for us is that Quran is telling us that these models from the past will help you to understand the psyche of those people and the psyche of Momineen, so that we can relate to them and not become impatient, not become discouraged, and keep pursuing our path, that is Sirat al-Mustaqim. Firstly, the messenger Nuh was sent to his people with the guidance from Allah, so that those who were looking for answers to the questions arising in their hearts and minds, for example, regarding their own purpose of life, the problems being faced in their society, class struggle, the question of death, etc., would find these answers from the Wahi of Allah. So Quran says that whatever questions arise in human hearts, it is the responsibility of Allah to provide answer based on reason and rational of human creation. So this is the thing we should keep in mind when we go through these verses. Secondly, Nuh acted as a clear warner, leaving no iota of doubt about his own status as a messenger of Allah, and working with a clear aim towards the system of Deen with a view to remove the imbalances within the society in which he lived and create harmony under the permanent values. So every messenger acted as a warner and, of course, giving of glad tidings if people follow the guidance of Allah. And that is the position of each one of us as well, that after we have come to this guidance, learned the Quran, and we pass it on to others as well. Thirdly, it is made clear to the people that only the laws of Allah need to be obeyed, as the man-made laws have created problems in the society, and this is unacceptable under the laws of Allah. Few more aspects of these two verses. Fourthly, letting these people know that if the guidance of Allah is not followed, then they should not assume that there will be no consequences of this, and that they can continue to follow their same path under the existing system, and that this rich-poor divide will continue unabated. Now, this is an important point for us, that if we think that why should I put in more effort, then that means that we are accepting the man-devised systems, and we think that nothing will change maybe in our life, during our life period. But Quran says that don't do that. What you need to do is put in your best by coming together and pursue this path, because this path will always lead you to success. Nuh shared his concern and perception of the state of affairs in their society with them, and this is evident from the verse, Inni akhafu alaykum azaba yawmin alim. So he tells them that I do fear for you a punishment which is linked to your misdeeds of a grievous day. Because Nuh and those Momineen with him were watching that what these people are doing. And as their state becomes deteriorated with the passage of time, so he acts as a warner and tells them that this is not acceptable to Allah, and the law of requital is going to catch up with their misdeeds. We can relate this aspect to the state of hardships faced by the majority of mankind in the world. This visible hardship is in the physical domain based on economics, whereas the world of the human psyche is in a state of fear and anxiety, and this is seldom taken into account by most people. Human beings being physical, we concentrate too much on the economic side, and we forget that this deprivation, enslavement, and the destitution and creation of yatim and miskeen, how much mental misery and anxiety it creates for other human beings. And we as students of the Quran must learn to feel that, must learn to acknowledge that and empathize on that, because that is how we make progress. All students of the Quran need to keep both the physical and psychological aspects of the human existence in their focus, and this should form part of the process of apprising others about Deen. So when we tell others, we have to inform them that we don't have to live under this fear and huzn. This state is unacceptable. Our life as human beings is not meant to be miserable. And since we have a self and we have a body, and we should meet the requirements and needs of both aspects of our existence. Next verse 11:27, understanding psyche of rich and powerful. فَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ قَوْمِهِ مَا نَرَاكَ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلَنَا وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعَكَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَاذِلُنَا بادي الرأي وما نرى لكم علينا من فضل بل نظنكم كاذبين. Meanings, at this the powerful man of his nation who possessed an abundance of the means of sustenance, i.e. the wealthy and ruling class which had adopted a path of rejection and rebelliousness, said that what we see is that you are a human being like us. Hence, how can we accept that you are the messenger of Allah? And as far as these people are concerned who are following you, what is their status? They are people of a lower class among us. That is, they consider them an inferior people. And it is clearly evident that they have not adopted your maslak, your way of life, through the use of intellect and reasoning. They have associated with you without giving it any great thought. So maslak over here means that path which is put forward by the messenger under the guidance of Wahi. We do not witness any such thing due to which you possess any loftier status than us. Hence, we think that you are absolutely false in your proclamation. Man-devised systems always create imbalances. Here the Quran has commented on the outlook of the rich and powerful. This is the reality on the ground of any human system, that power is directly proportional to the possession of wealth by those in power. Because it is a physical, the whole system is very physical. And if they possess physical power, which comes, of course, with wealth, then they can manipulate the system. And that is why Allah has said in the Quran that if you follow Iman and Saleh deeds, power will come to you. Because power is linked with Iman and Saleh deeds. We have gone through some of these aspects previously. It is the few in any society or land who do not allow things to get reformed. The Quran has referred to this issue in a verse, وَقَانَ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ تِسَّةُ وَرَهْطٍ يُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا يُصْلِحُونَ. There were in the city 9 men who created fasad in the land and would not reform. So even in today's world, if we see that people who are in power, they are not in a great number, but they are controlling the majority by virtue of having control over wealth and power. And as a result, they are able to enslave others. The messengers of Allah used to pass on the message to everyone. However, the rich and powerful did not wish to change the status quo as it went against their immediate interests. However, their hearts and minds recognized the injustices in the society as this was based on undeniable evidence, but they did not resolve these issues. Why? Because their unbridled desires had created these problems in the first place, and if they wished to solve them, they would not have created them in the first instance. So general rule is that people who create problems, they are not going to solve those problems. And when they solve the problems, it is because of the pressure of those people who are suffering because of their problems. And this is the pattern which we see in the present world as well. Continuing with this verse, when they were unable to find any suitable response to the issues raised by the Wahi of Allah, they resorted to distractions by stating that firstly, you cannot be a messenger of Allah since you are a human being like us. Very standard tactics. When people don't want to change, they don't want to address the problems, they will come up with some kind of excuses. And nowadays, of course, media helps them because they pay the whole setup of media. We also hear similar kinds of distracting comments. For example, in the case of the Quran, we all experience this. Only scholars can understand the Quran, and you do not appear to be a scholar. Or this Quran cannot be followed like the messenger and his companions followed it. Or the Quran cannot be understood without the aid of hadith, etc. And we all experience it. I have experienced it. And when I have confronted such kind of arguments, and I said, if Quran cannot be understood, then why do you write these tafsir and translations and give lectures? And then they do not have an answer for that. Because deep down, they don't want to come to the Quran. And they have an aversion towards the Quran because Quran confronts us the reality of the law of requital. It holds each one of us accountable for our own deeds. And human beings don't want to be held accountable. Secondly, the people who have responded to the guidance of Allah belong to a lower class of society. And that's another line of argument. And do not possess wealth and power. So under the man-devised system, wealth and power, wealth becomes the criterion of success. If somebody has got more wealth, then that is his success. This means Allah is not with them, but is with us. So those who are in power and have more money, they say that it is in our fate. We are fortunate enough, and God is in fact with us, not with the poor, as we control the means of sustenance and also have power over these means. Because human beings can justify anything. They have total control in this world and they can manipulate things. So that is why it is important that they have to be countered. The psyche working behind this kind of response points to arrogance, greed, intoxication of power, and total disregard of the law of requital. Thirdly, since they do not wish to come to the guidance of Allah and are unwilling to change their path of injustice, they clearly tell the messenger Nuh that they think he is a liar and hence they reject the Wahi of Allah. See how clearly Quran is guiding us that these kind of problems we will face wherever we are, and in whatever era we are born and we are living. So because the basic human being doesn't change. Have we acquired the ability to relate poverty, injustice, slums, etc. in the world to respect and dignity as a child? I have put this schematic together just to draw our attention to an important point, which we have discussed previously as well, but it is good to remind ourselves. Now, these are the slums, and they are human beings just like each one of us who were born as children and didn't know that they are going to be poor. And here is a rich family and their children. And then there are some more poor children on the side of a road. And then these are the richest, top 5 richest kids. And these are also human beings who are struggling to get some water. And then these are also rich children from developed world. And when a child is born, this is the state he or she is. They don't come with anything. They don't have wealth. They don't have power. They are just human beings like anyone else, and they don't bring anything in the world. Each child is born with intrinsic respect and dignity, and we need to bring out our latent potential to understand and retain clearly that a newborn child is not aware of its gender, color, appearance, status, parents, nationality. It comes with no wealth, possessions, and has a body plus a self with nothing on it. It takes birth as a child and is equal to another child in the world. Using the Quranic criterion, do we feel the need for the system of Deen? So what I've done is, if we see this kind of a world around us, and while we're seeing this world, we should also keep children right at the basic level in our mind as well, who are born with respect and dignity. And if we do not do anything as part of the system of Deen, and we do not understand the Quran, and we do not stick to this path, Sirat al-Mustaqim, then this state will continue and nothing will change in the world. In relation to the moral state of nations, the Quran has mentioned a number of major crimes or imbalances among nations which cut short their time of respite in the world. One of these crimes is to create classes within society where economically there is a gross disparity between the lower class and the upper class. And we have seen that if children are born equal, then human beings do not have the right to create these classes, upper and lower classes. And this class system cannot disappear unless the system of Deen comes. So this puts the true perspective before us as students of the Quran. We hear this kind of news quite often across the world that the gap between the rich and the poor has increased, and the way to bridge this gap is to organize handouts through the so-called social welfare system in some developed nations. While in the poor countries, it is done through individual charitable acts, charities, and NGOs. The whole system is a reflection of what is noted in verse 285 and also in Surah Al-Maun 107, 1-3. So we have to keep these things in mind while we are studying the Quran, and in fact throughout our daily living. Because unless it becomes part of our consciousness, we are not going to do something about it. And to do something about it is the first step is to realize it and then go to the Quran and find out the solution. Over and above these economic disparities, there is also the inherent discrimination of human beings by birth, firstly being born poor. So if a child is born poor, what is his or her fault? It is the system around us in the world which has made him or her poor. Secondly, as in Hinduism, consigned to a lifelong curse of lower class. Thirdly, the religious condemnation of being born with a sin. And that is another, for example, in a Christian belief that every child is born with a sin and nothing can be done, and our deeds don't matter. With these kind of belief systems across the world, how are we going to change this world? Simply cannot. Which cannot be removed through a righteous life. Fourthly, as a woman, and we know the state of a woman, even in the West, that men being dominant, being in power. So what kind of a state we have in the world? And there is a lot. What I have noted over here is just a glimpse of it. As we know, the Quran raises the whole edifice of human society on the basis of Deen built on the permanent values, where a human being is never subjected to any man-made laws. Let us go to the next verse, 11:28, understanding Wahi in its finer aspects. Qala ya qawmi araytum in kuntu ala bayyinatin min rabbi wa atani rahmatan min indihi fa ummiyat alaykum an-nulzimukuha wa antum laha karihun. Meanings, at this Nuh replied, O people of my nation, have you even reflected on this, that I act on the knowledge and being bestowed on me from my Rabb? And he has given me a code of guidance as a blessing, which is complete rahmat, but you are unable to see any of this. And we know rahmat includes all means of nourishment and development. And you also dislike that these facts are shown to you and explained to you, then what else can I do other than what I am already doing? It cannot happen that we force these things upon you, because Iman is the acceptance of the decision of the heart based on knowledge and reasoning. Therefore, it can never just be imposed on anyone. Further explanation of this verse, Nuh continues his mission while living amongst them and going about his daily routine. And he keeps reminding them that the way in which they are living their life cannot continue unabated like this. The consequences of their wrongdoings are going to catch up with them soon. There is a better way to live this finite life, and it is to follow Rububiyyat as a system, so that there are no classes in society. And having no classes should be a source of pleasure for us. We should see human beings as equals. Why should I see another human being who was born just like myself to be lower than me in terms of the economics or even at the self level? He or she must never feel that they are lower than others just because they have less money in their pocket. And there is an equitable distribution of the means of sustenance. This system will also cater for the needs of the human self. I understand this code of life. Thus, if you listen to me, I can help with establishing this system which will bring about balance within the society. And just to pay attention to this part of the verse, وَأَتَانِي رَحْمَةً مِّنْ إِنْدِهِ. Notice the full conviction when he declares he has bestowed rahmat to me from his presence, that Allah has given me this rahmat. And that is the way students of the Quran should feel when they have acquired a good understanding of the Quran and the system of Deen. However, Nuh also made it clear that the guidance of Allah cannot be simply forced on anyone. It has to be accepted through one's own choice using the application of rational reasoning. Because forced Iman or forced belief system is of no use. It does not help to develop ourselves, and such people are not of much use for the establishment of the system of Deen. They can be good followers. They can conform to the system and live within that system. But firm conviction is very important for the establishment of the system of Deen. Verses 29 and 30, expanding the issue of reward. وَيَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مَالًا إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ وَلَكِنِّي أَرَاكُمْ قَوْمًا تَجْهَلُونَ وَيَا قَوْمِ مَنْ يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِنْ طَرَدتُّهُمْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Meanings, then also pay attention to this fact that whatever I am doing for you, I do not ask you for any recompense in terms of wealth and riches. Hence, what need is there for me to lie to you? The reward for my efforts is with my Allah. But I cannot just turn away those people who have accepted Iman in the truth of this system because you consider them to be inferior and do not like to be in their company. If I do this, then When they will return to their Rabb, what will they say about me? In other words, this will be strictly against the command of Allah. You call them ignorant, but what I see is that there are no people as ignorant as you are. If because of you I dissociate myself from these people with aversion, no doubt you will be pleased by this, but just think that when according to the law of Allah, the punishment for this crime will become imposed on me, then who can protect me from that? Who is it that can help me against the law of Allah? So there is a class struggle over there because those people who responded to the Wahi of Allah, they joined and accepted Iman with Hazrat Nuh. And then they formed a small Jamaat Momineen over there. And of course, they then carried out their task. And that aspect was very uncomfortable for those people in power because they don't want numbers to be increasing, one. And secondly, they don't want poor who do their jobs to become suddenly powerful because they must have realized that with Iman, these people get a voice and they can stand up for their rights. Deen provides a higher purpose of life. Human beings carry out a cost-benefit assessment in life on a continual basis. We have seen previously that the religious clergy sell their versions of religions in order to earn a living. Nuh has made it clear to everyone that he is not asking for any recompense for his efforts on this path, i.e., the benefits attached to this guidance are so immense that if you people come to grips with this, then this self-development will in itself become your reward. You will grasp what I am stating here with regard to the issue of reward. So reward is inbuilt, as we know that reward is inbuilt within our thoughts and actions. So once we come to the Wahi of Allah, and as a consequence, the benefit which our self gets, that becomes a reward in itself. We are not going to look for people who come to the Quran are not going to look for rewards. If they are looking for rewards, then essentially they become part of the religious clan who are there to make money out of by selling the verses of the Quran. People perform religious rituals and practices, some of which involve hardships and regular inconveniences in order to gain some emotive contentment for pleasing God based on their own concept, not the concept of Allah as divined in the Quran. Why do they do this? I included this line because it is good to remind ourselves and what is going on under the religious faction or religious domain, so that we know that what is happening. This is part of being students of the Quran, that we critically look at everything which is happening around us in the world. Here, Nuh and all the messengers states that the reward for my striving is with Allah. It means he also expects some reward for his efforts. But this reward is not the same, i.e., not in the form of material gains, emotive self-satisfaction, etc. What is that reward? And this is something which we have to reflect very profoundly, that what exactly is the reward? Because when we are working for the system of Deen, we are not getting any material benefits. In fact, over here, we are passing on, sharing our wealth and whatever we have gained from the capitalist system with others, and do not even expect a thank you for that. The reason is that the reward of the system of Deen is right in front of all of us. Expanding it further, Allah has noted this reward by stating, Inna Allah ashtara minal mu'minina anfusahum wa amwalahum bi anna lahumul jannata. This is the famous verse from Surah Tawbah. Allah has purchased of Momineen their selves and their possessions in exchange for a Jannat. And of course, this Jannat is in the shape of the system of Deen as far as this world is concerned. Let us look at this contract in some more detail. There are 4 constituents of this contract. Firstly, Allah is the buyer. Secondly, the sellers are Momineen. Thirdly, the entities being exchanged are the selves, that is non-physical, of Momineen. And fourthly, the possessions, which are physical, of the Momineen. This agreement is an integral part of accepting Iman. And this is that stage for which we should be ready at some later stage if and when the system of Deen starts shaping up. And presently, of course, we are going through this education, training, and self-development process. This is a voluntary, unwritten contract as far as Momineen are concerned. It can become written as an oath, but initially at this stage, this is unwritten. as they have to make the decision to sell these two items of theirs and offer these to Allah. Allah as a buyer who is not visible. We should keep it in mind that Allah is not visible, but we know He exists. Allah as a buyer is just available to buy these from Momineen, and then the contract becomes binding on him. And that is where Iman bil Ghaib comes in. That we know that what Quran is stating is a reality, is a fact. He cannot get out of this contract as long as Momineen keep their side of the covenant. Under Deen, a written oath can be an option. And that is important, that in this contract, in this commitment by Allah, once He buys the selves and possessions of Momineen in exchange for a Jannah, and the Jannah is going to come in the future through their efforts, then it becomes binding on Allah. The tangible part of the contract is Momineen with their selves, their possessions, and their efforts based on deeds on this path of achieving this Jannat. This Jannat is characterized by two fundamentals, which is this will have no fear and no huzn. And we know the state. Fear is from external threats, and huzn is our own inner psychological issues and dissonances. And that is very important, because the man-devised system, in fact, creates huzn. So there are a number of points which are mentioned over here, which need our very, very careful reflection. Continuing further on these two verses, this also means that, as noted in 238, these Momineen need to be fully conscious of the existence of this fear and huzn in the society in which they live, and they can expand the sphere of this understanding across the world. Because if we do not understand this fear and huzn, then we will miss a number of points from the Quran when we are studying it. So this fear and huzn, we should be able to feel it and understand it, and also relate it to human beings across the world. Having experienced this on a continuous basis, they need to come to this conclusion that it is only through the help of the Quranic value system that this state of fear and huzn can be addressed in its totality. Who is the beneficiary in the fulfillment of this contract? It is solely Momineen, and of course mankind through them, who benefit from this. Can we now visualize the reason for Nuh to say that I do not expect any reward from your side, it is from Allah? So that is important, that why did messengers, other messengers also have been quoted to say this. And over here, this is why Hazrat Nuh was telling those people in power that I'm not expecting any reward from you. I'm not looking at your wealth. What I'm looking for is that the system you have created, this is going to bound to end in destruction. Nuh then explains to them that these people who have joined with him in this program of Allah are not ordinary human beings. They are in it for a mission. Hence, they are very important in the balance of Allah, and since I fully comprehend their significance, hence I cannot push them away. In fact, there is no question of pushing them away. Of course, he's trying to make a point to these rich people that these are extremely important people. But this is the way Deen emerges. This is just like a seed. Right from the grassroots level, it has to rise. And that is something which is of great instruction for all of us. He has pointed to an important step on the path of Allah for us as guidance, that when people join in this striving, they gain a higher significance in the scheme of Deen. This serves as a sign for Momineen that their efforts are heading to success. In fact, this becomes the sign when people come together and then they stick to this path and are willing to subject themselves to further self-development. That means the system of Deen has now started evolving. Next verse 1131, opponents of Deen raise all kinds of objections. وَلَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ إِنْدِي خَزَائِنُ اللَّهِ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ وَلَا أَقُولُ إِنِّي مَلَكٌ وَلَا أَقُولُ لِلَّذِينَ تَزْدَرِي أَعْيُنُكُمْ لَنْ يُؤْتِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ إِنِّي إِذًا لَّمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Meanings of this verse: as far as this objection of yours is concerned, that I am a human being like you, and we people also do not have any economic ascendancy over you, when did I ever claim that I have treasures for riches bestowed by Allah, and that I know matters of the unseen, and that I am not a man but an angel? I have never said any of this. Although I will definitely say this, that this opinion of yours about these people, that since they are lowly and meek, according to your criteria, they are also lowly and meek in the sight of Allah, and that they cannot obtain any means of prosperity and betterment from Him, this is wrong. According to the law of Allah, the criterion for respect and loftiness and the right to blessings and growth are the personal characters of a human being. His sight is not on external status, but is focused on the human heart. If I conform with you in this matter, then I will also be among those who display transgression against the criterion established by Allah. So the task of a messenger and Momineen is not easy, because they have to counter all these kind of unreasonable arguments. Beneficiaries of a wrong system resist change. Here the Quran has noted that the opponents of Nuh questioned his status as a messenger. Their religious minds could not imagine that a human being can be the messenger of Allah. Their belief system tells them that their God should perform miracles and send some angels according to their self-concocted beliefs. Next point is, doing prophecies is part of any religious belief system. And here too, Nuh is asked to provide something of the unseen. He tells them clearly that he is a human being just like all of them and is sharing the Wahi of Allah after receiving it, so that the state in which they live can be replaced with a better system of Deen. They cannot continue to live in that situation of gross imbalance in the society. He then declares to them emphatically that the system which is in place, in which there are clear class divisions between equal human beings created by the rich and the powerful, such a system is unacceptable to Allah. So he's telling them already what is to come, that this path of destruction is going to end up in ruin and in devastation. Continuing, all human beings are equal and deserving of equal respect and dignity. There is no question of someone being at a higher status just because he has acquired more wealth and power in an unjust man-made system. This state of affairs cannot continue indefinitely in the world. If this is not interrupted by the law of requital after a certain defined threshold, then the world will become inhabitable. The Quran has asked us to think hard and figure out the responses from the opponents of Deen rationally according to the circumstances existing in the world. In today's world, we need to counter the arguments which appear before us in support of the capitalist system. For example, people will say that there is a lot of technological developments takes place, and as a result, the gap between the rich and poor is getting bridged. Tremendous progress in the fields of science. There is a communication revolution taking place. That is fine. But what about human beings? What about poverty in most of the world? What about deprivation? What about wars? What about exploitation? So all these things have to be put forward to counter these arguments. That fine, all of these things should be utilized for the good of mankind, not should be concentrated in few hands and then they go and exploit others. However, at a fundamental level, the same human beings who existed at the time of Nuh with the same issues of the physical and the self-domains also exist today. At the level of being human, we are still equal and we will continue to be equal. And that is a permanent value and it is never going to change. And are exactly the same beings, and this will be the situation till the last man on the planet. And we have to develop this conviction, because I also hear some kind of noises that things will change and AI will come and do this and that. Let's be very clear, human beings who were present at the time of Nuh are going to be the same till the last day on this planet. Verses 32-33, rejecting the law of requital. قالوا يا نوح قد جادلتنا فأكثرت جدالنا فاتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين قال إنما يأتيكم به الله إن شاء وما أنتم بمعجزين. Meanings of this verse: these people had no answer to these reasonings. They started to say, "Oh Nuh, you have started a quarrel with us for nothing and are persisting in it greatly. Let us now end this matter. If you're truthful in your claim, then bring on the destruction about which you keep on warning us repeatedly." Nuh said that bringing or not bringing of this destruction is not within my control. It will descend according to the law of Allah. However, what I do know is that it will most definitely come. You cannot make the law of Allah inoperable and impotent so that whatever takes place according to it may not occur. Explaining these two verses further, here things become clear and confrontational so that no doubt remains between haq and batil. And this always happens as the campaign of Momineen starts getting some kind of strength and power, then people at the top start becoming uncomfortable. We should keep in mind that what is noted here had taken place over a period of many, many years. Those who joined with Nu, i.e. Momineen, went through exactly the same rational reasoning process that we are experiencing in today's world. Whatever is noted here, we need to relate this to our era, and at a cognitive level, there is no difference between those human beings and us. Allah's laws and processes remain the same at the level of human self-development. People in power do not wish to change the system of which they are obvious beneficiaries. In fact, we have seen that they go to great lengths to justify the man-made system and put propaganda in place so that the minds of the poor and majority do not go towards their rights as equal human beings. Because if they start giving rights to equal human beings, in their mind, the whole system will collapse. And of course, it will collapse because from their point of view, people will start raising their heads and they will fight for their rights. So it is in their interest to keep people ignorant and keep them busy with fear and huzn. These people in power see their survival in the continuation of the capitalist system as they live at an animalistic level and are not ready to look rationally at the system being put forward by the Wahi of Allah. Now, by stating this animalistic level, it is a statement of fact because most human beings, they think that the life will end with death. And when we think that the life will end with death, we literally become animals because animals' life ends with death. But since we have a self, and if we recognize ourselves and then say that this self has the potential to survive a physical death, then we rise to the human level. So the Quran is drawing our attention to this factual position that you have a self and there is a life in the hereafter, and Allah exists as a creator and your creation has a purpose. And all these aspects we have to keep in mind when we are explaining it to others. Expanding it further, acquisition and possession of physical power intoxicates all human beings and they do not wish to give this up, so they counter any possibility of threat to this power by all means at their disposal. And history is a witness to that. And that is why Allah calls himself as Aziz and Hakim, because wise use of power can only come through the Quran. And that is why Momineen have to also become Aziz and Hakim. And this is the point we should put in mind, that expecting something good for those people in power, for wider mankind, just forget it. It is never going to happen. The situation ultimately reaches a stalemate between Nuh and his companions and those who held the reins of power in the society. Having been warned repeatedly over a period of many years, the opponents finally asked Nuh to hasten the punishment linked to their wrong deeds. Obviously, they do not think about the existence of the law of requital and their accountability. And while we are going through these verses, we should keep it in mind that law of requital is working, while all this wrangling and the quarreling and argument is going on between Hazrat Nuh, Momineen, and the wider public in the society. The messenger in such situations knows that the outcomes of the evil path of people is linked to the time of respite. If it has not yet expired, then the punishment will not materialize, and this time period is very testing for Momineen. Because the society reaches a certain state where these people in power then get fed up with this repeated warning and they say, go and bring this punishment on us and we will see if you can do that. And over here, Hazrat Nuh has told them that this punishment will come when the time of respite ends. With the arrival of the Quran, which has noted all the major causes from the history of nations known to contribute to the fall of nations, we can evaluate some kind of time scale pointing to the decline of one nation and the rise of another. Today, we are quite aware of all the major points, all the major evils which these past nations did, and on account of which they were destroyed. And we can assess these things in our today's world. And then from there, we can see that how the events are taking place, and we can get a fair amount of idea that this is not going to last very long. Next verse 1134, getting ready for the final hour. Wala yanfukum nushi in arato an ansahalakum in kana Allahu yuridu an yugwiyakum huwa rabbukum wa alayhi turja'un. The meaning of this verse, also remember that if you make yourselves deserving of the punishment of Allah due to your deeds, then even if I desired 1,000 times to repair your wrongdoings, I will not be able to do this. At that point in time, even my compassion will not be able to benefit you. Your master and owner is Rabb, not me. And every step of yours is going in his direction. The outcomes of all your deeds will be established according to his law of requital. In this regard, even I will not be able to do anything. Very important message over here from the Quran, that do not take those responsibilities which are not yours and relate it to Allah and Rabb when we talk to others. Further reflection, since Nuh knew clearly that this punishment which is inbuilt in their deeds will certainly arrive at some point in the future, he wished to inform them about this as plainly as possible, so that those who wish to be destroyed know that once it descends on them, then that will be the end of their physical existence in this world. Sometimes people do not realize that they are going to die in any case. So when they ask for hastening up or quickening this destruction with which Momineen and these messengers used to warn them, they don't realize it and think hard that they are going to die in any case. Here he makes his own status very clear, i.e. that when this destruction arrives, then do not look towards me for any help or rescue. When Allah's laws reach that stage where the time of respite ends, then no one can help. The verse concludes by stating, Huwa Rabbukum wa ilayhi turja'un. He is your Rabb and to him will you return. I.e., the Gubiyat in the human world as in the outer world demands that those who make efforts on this path, their striving bears results. In any case, the law of requital is ensuring that all human deeds bear results according to the scales defined by Allah. Last verse for today's presentation, 1135, an important aspect for self-development. Am yakulu naftarahu kul in niftaratahu fa alayya ijrani wa ana bari'un mimma tujrimun. Meanings of the verse, Allah said, "O Nuh, do these people say that you have invented these things from your own self and are relating these falsely to Allah? Say to them that had I done this, then my crime is on my own self. You will not be questioned about this. And the crimes which you are committing, you will need to pay for them. I will not be held responsible for them." Next is, do not satisfy yourselves by saying that whatever I'm saying is an invention by me. What you need to do is look at whatever you are doing, how does that appear? An instruction for the students of Deen. Nuh made sustained efforts to present all kinds of rationales to the people of his nation, but barring a few, they did not pay any attention as they did not wish to give up the path of their unbridled desires. They refused to come to the system of Rububiyat and were determined to stay on their path of Batil. And we know Batil means which produces wrong results, which produces evil outcomes. This was unacceptable to Allah and Nuh plus Momineen. Hence, here Nuh told them that if you think that I have invented this message from my own side, then let this crime and its effects be mine. However, I am free from the effects of the crimes which you continue to commit and for which you will soon be held accountable. There is an instruction here for us, i.e. the Quran presents details of the system of Deen, and those who can figure out the finer aspects create a strong desire to strive towards its establishment. When these people present these details to others, those who fail to see the system of Deen either oppose it or are disinterested and create their own platforms to suit their own desires. And we see it all around that people who even come to the Quran, and when they see that there is something which they have to contribute in terms of their understanding of the system of Deen, they think that this system of Deen cannot come because the way world is working, the way human system is working, it is too powerful, and they don't see any point in pursuing something which they cannot, their physical self or their physical mind cannot understand and comprehend. And this is a very refined point when we are studying the Quran, that over here Allah is again and again drawing our attention that you are not alone. Allah is there to provide help. That is, His laws are there to provide help. And that is why all these models are explained in the Quran. This is the state of even those who do study the Quran, but not as a system, rather for some other reasons of their own, i.e., not in line with what the Quran states clearly. Because if there is no system of Deen in the Quran, and it is just for our personal or individual salvation, then Quran turns out and becomes a book of religion. It is not then a book of Deen in which there is a system. Then that means we accept fait accompli, that whatever is happening in the world, we have to just live with it and contend with it and conform with it and then live this life. Concluding reflections, a few more points which relate to the human psyche merit our attention. Firstly, the world in which the messenger used to appear was in a state of high criminality. And it is not an easy task to warn a people who had become used to their crimes, which provides them with great benefits. And we can see that more or less in every state in the world, there is a high level of crime. And crime does not mean only physical crimes. It is a crime to disregard the intrinsic respect and dignity which is given to every child by birth. And it is a crime in the book of Allah. They are not going to give these up easily. People don't even talk about it. Coming to terms with this kind of human psyche is part of our education and training. Secondly, when the Quran states, وَأَنَا بَرِيٌّ مِّمَّا تُجْرِمُونَ, we are free from your crimes, means that we seek as much information as possible about those crimes and the suffering these crimes cause to wider humanity. We only, as students of the Quran, we not only dissociate from what they are doing intellectually and also physically, but also see that what kind of suffering these crimes are causing on humanity. And the biggest suffering is when we downgrade or degrade a human being as a child. Then we dissociate cognitively from that criminality, keeping in mind that as and when the system of Deen becomes established, we will be dealing with these criminals and the effects of these crimes. The Quran guides us here in coming to grips with the criminality of a non-Deen system and in acquiring conviction and resoluteness to stand up against the Batil system. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.